At the Suez Canal, now the border between Egypt and Israel, the Egyptians launched a war of attrition, and the Israelis fought back. With growing casualties, political attitudes in both countries hardened. There was renewed conflict in the Jordan Valley as well. Israeli soldiers were in constant pursuit of Palestinians who crossed into the West Bank to attack Israeli targets. There was no talk of peace. Inside Jordan, the Palestinians were busy building up their forces. Their charter called for the replacement of Israel by a Palestinian state and the expulsion of all Jews who arrived after 1948. In 1967, a small band of Palestinian guerrillas set up a camp in Karame in the Jordan River Valley. From the bank of the Jordan, they could see the Israeli soldiers patrolling the West Bank.
We waited until the Israeli patrol vehicle had passed by. Then we started to cross the river. The first to cross was Abu Ammar.
Abu Ammar, or Yasser Arafat, was an engineer who became one of the founders of a resistance group called Fatah. This was their first crossing of the River Jordan, launching their campaign to establish a Palestinian state.
We know that is not easy. But we are ready to pay the price.
On me, the water of the River Jordan came up to here. On taller people, of course, it wouldn't come so far up. Now Arafat is short, and the water came up to his shoulder. He had his clothes on top of his head, and he waded slowly, slowly. If he slipped, he would fall, and everything would get wet, especially his gun.
Beyond the river, in the occupied West Bank, the Fatah guerrillas set about recruiting and training small resistance groups to strike at Israel.
The best targets were the ones we could take by surprise. For example, moving vehicles. You open fire, a group of 3 or 4 of you. Then, if you throw 1 or 2 grenades, that settles it. You're safe, and they're dead.
The guerrillas had the support of Jordan's regular army.
At first, I encouraged them when they went on operations. We would provide covering fire as they crossed the river.
If the Israelis hit back, the Kingdom of Jordan would take the blow.
So I asked His Majesty to meet them.
I had never seen a photograph of Arafat up to that point, or had a description of him. So I was looking at a sort of a big burly figure that I thought must be Arafat. And when he finally came to say goodbye, I suddenly realized it wasn't the image I had formed of Arafat.
The actions launched from Karame worried the king, but he was unable to stop them.
Karame had become a huge military base in Jordan. The terrorists there were sending units into Israel. The straw that broke the camel's back was an attack on an Israeli bus taking pupils on a school trip south of the Dead Sea. It hit a Palestinian mine. Children were killed and injured.
In response, the Israeli army was ordered to destroy the Palestinian bases in Karame and south of the Dead Sea.
We were not very careful. After the 1967 war, we didn't take the enemy seriously. We didn't bother to hide any of our troop movements.
They came blatantly with their tanks and artillery and troops messed up. So we realized that something was about to happen. I think they were overconfident. Early in the morning at about 5, we were told that the first Israeli elements had crossed one of the bridges.
The Israelis attacked. Facing them were 300 Palestinian fighters with orders from Arafat to hold their ground. By midday, half of them were dead, and most of the rest were rounded up.
Arafat had slipped out of there at 2 o'clock in the morning.
But the battle wasn't over yet. Jordanian army tanks arrived in force.
I jumped when I was told the Israeli tanks were coming. I jumped out of bed. Shoot, I said. I was jumping with excitement. I wanted to face the Jews.
Excitement.
I wanted to teach them a lesson. Yes, by God, I did.
The Jordanian involvement in the battle was very massive. We destroyed many of their tanks.
29 Israelis died in the battle. The Palestinians declared victory.
We faced this huge, up-to-date military Israeli forces. In the beginning, we were alone. After 5 hours, some small battalions from the Jordanian government attended us and fought with us without any central instructions from their headquarters. But at the end, it was the first victory for the Arab nation after this big defeat of 1967.
They claimed it to be a victory for them. We wouldn't have disputed that except for the fact that it wasn't true.
But it was a public relations triumph. Arafat was chosen to command all the factions in the Palestine Liberation Organization. Inspired by the stories of a great victory at Karame, volunteers from many countries came to swell the ranks.
But unfortunately, the majority were the worst type of people. They were untrained and undisciplined. The PLO grew larger, and our problems grew with it.
It was total anarchy. We had 52 various guerrilla organizations of all various types, and they weren't just Palestinian guerrilla organizations. Every international guerrilla organization had a presence in the country.
We were naive people. We were very enthusiastic, very revolutionary, and at the same time, we were, and I can assure you, we were very innocent. We felt that King Hussein, as a reactionary leader, leading a reactionary regime, is an obstacle, and that in order to make our revolution succeed, we need to remove this obstacle.
One day, shooting broke out in the capital, Amman, and the king drove off to investigate.
And on a crossroad, where there was a military police checkpost, we found that one side of the road was closed and the other side also was blocked by an army lorry.